Great. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be presenting and moderating this panel on micromobility, probably what we could be calling the future of our cities. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about how this micromobility is affecting in a positive way to the cities, how they are making them better already, and how could they make it better? What are the challenges preventing micromobility startups, which are very recent, from making it better? To introduce a little bit the challenge, which I think is very important, pollution, it's something that's very present. There is 4.2 million deaths in the world due to ambient air pollution. Most of this pollution in cities come from cars. There's a lot of congestion, and as we know, the ecosystems are breaking, and we have a global crisis. So this is what gave rise to this. I think it'll be very interesting to understand what you guys are doing towards that change, towards that very impactful change happening now in the cities.
Yeah, so I'm Caroline from Voi, and we launched our micromobility service, e-scooters, about a year ago in Stockholm, and I think exactly a year ago in Madrid, which was our second city. And the impact that it's had so far in the cities where we're live, 38 cities, is over 10 million rides in less than a year. I don't think that there's any other, industry right now that's growing as fast as the micromobility sector is. And what we can see and what we've been seeing from day one is that there's a huge demand for this new type of mobility. The cities get denser and denser. We can't fit the amount of cars that we're currently growing with today. So I think there's definitely a need for an alternative that you can combine with public transportation. And I think that micromobility is the solution to this.
Yeah, great. Definitely. So for you, Alvaro, you lead Lime in Spain. What is the impact actually on Spain? How is it going? What has it changed in Spain?
So I would say that in Spain, the main challenge that we have is still education. So education meaning helping our customers to understand where to park, how to deal with it. Safety is actually, we were discussing that before. It's actually has on average a lower impact than other means of transportation. And for us, one of the things that we are very honest with the city councils when we meet, and we say, okay, we're not the perfect solution for everything. We're a complement for the transportation that exists. So for us, public transport is still and has to be the dorsal spine of mobility, but still, we have ways to complement it. And as Caroline was mentioning, we also we've seen an unprecedented growth. So we've been working with scooters for around 2 years. We just hit last month 100 million rides. So it's something that not even Lyft or Uber took 4 years to do so. And this is just not something to brag, but just to be very focused on the actual the high demand that mobility comes with. And for us, when we need to do an effort towards mobility, towards being operational efficient, we don't want to just remove cars from the streets. What we want to say is that if there are cars, that they're full of people. If there's, we want 100% occupation in any vehicle that it's in the streets. Yeah. So we're fighting for that, and we need to look into imagine that this is like a working chain, and the bottleneck is not on the scooters. Actually, it's on the cars. You were mentioning before that there's the high, the occupation of cars in the streets that take over 50% of the public transport. Of the public space, and this is something that it's insane, to be honest.
Yeah. So it looks like micromobility and your solutions, you put them on the street, and people is using them from day zero. No, that's quite impressive and quite encouraging, I would say, given the challenges that we have in cities. And maybe from an investor perspective, Paul, you guys have invested early on, actually, in the European scene in micromobility with Tier. How do you see this world? Why did you invest in micromobility, maybe?
Yeah, so first off, I think you should brag about that number. Both numbers, it's insane. If you just sort of take any of those companies in isolation, compare it to other sort of venture-backed startups, and it's just off the charts. Northstone is an early-stage fund, so we invest kind of Series A, sometimes Series B. what we look for are kind of macro trends. And we sort of step back and we said, okay, cities right now, I was saying earlier this week, there's about half of the world lives in cities right now, and that's going to go up to 2/3 in the next 25 years as the population grows from 7 billion to 10 billion. And already, I mean, I feel like I'm still recovering from my commute in from Madrid, inhaling all of the fumes. It was horrible. But you know, my daughter's commute in London is no better. She has to go down a road that's 4 times above the legal toxic limit, and she's 4 years old. So it's just it's actually just really messed up what we're putting our people through in cities. So we have complete conviction that that is going to change. Whether the politicians do it or not, the consumers are going to revolt. And eventually, they're going to demand different forms of transit to get around that are healthier and less impacting to the environment. So on that basis, we made an investment in Tier. We are looking at other players that are going to play a role in sort of reshaping these cities as well.
Super interesting. I think your particular case is quite interesting to me because you come from an insurance, no? At Mutua.
Yeah.
You guys insure cars typically, or have been insuring cars until now, cars, motorbikes, the vehicles that probably these guys are trying to get off the road. And yet you have recently invested in mobile, and I believe Chippy as well, no? You were mentioning. Why the change? Why are you guys moving towards there?
Well, I mean, as we all agree, this is a trend that is coming. We don't know exactly how fast, but it's coming. And Mutua, as a car insurance mainly, is always trying to provide services to his customers, to users. Okay. So in this case, if cities are forbidden for cars, we need to provide something else to our customers. And in this case, micromobility seems like one of the first steps towards that path. So our interest here is not like pushing this industry, but at least be there for our customers.
Okay, very interesting. So I think clearly we agree that this is the future. I think most of the people agree that we need a change. In the world, the status is collapsing. The change is coming. The people is using it. But I don't think everything is as nice as this, no? So we still have a lot of challenges. You were mentioning 50% of the public space is used for car infrastructure. So how do we fit these vehicles in the city?
I think that's a very, very good question. And I think all of us working in micromobility also have, our industry also has its challenges from cluttering, for example, scooters in the street, taking up space, and as Alvaro mentioned, like educating of our users. And I think that that's something that we as an industry have to do kind of collaboratively, pushing for regulation in cities, such as licenses. We at Voi, we think that we should probably have 2 or 3 players in each city, and probably not 15 players. We need the cities to invest in parking space for our new types of vehicles, and we need a clear classification of what is an e-scooter really, what type of vehicle is it, so that our users also can easier understand how and where to use it. And I think in addition to pushing for regulation, we also need to educate our users in the best way possible, because we're putting a new vehicle out in the street that they might not know how to handle. So if anyone is interested, we actually have an online traffic school that you can take to become a certified e-scooter rider.
You can get an e-scooter license.
Yes, only online though.
Okay, interesting. So how are the cities reacting? Like for me, that's another question. This is great, it needs to happen. Are the cities willing to make it happen?
I would say that it's pretty much tailor-made, so it really depends on the city. So there's the case of Spain, there's no national regulation. In Portugal, that we were speaking before, there's a clear example of how the city council is willing to collaborate. So it's a city that has actually given 600 spaces, like parking spaces, to any kind of micromobility partners. That includes also bikes and scooters. And that actually allows that within maximum 150 meters, you can find a parking spot. So that really helps to have the city much more tidy than it would be in other cases. So this is like, and they're also understanding the challenges. They know that it's a city that's willing to innovate, it's willing, and it's wanting to like play ping pong with us, just like discussing ideas. And I think that's the way to go forward. Then another thing that is very important is like understanding like, and that's a very bold statement, but I would say that for me, like private cars, the way you're using them is like what tobacco was in the 80s. I was born in the 80s, and I was like actually, like I was in the planes, and there were like people in front of me when I was like 3 years old, like smoking cigarettes, and that was absolutely fine. And that's something that we need to kind of like, like also like push the administrations to say, hey, this is not normal. It's like that there's right now, currently you were mentioning like this 4 million deaths. There's more people in Europe that die actually out of like pollution cases than tobacco at the moment. So that's really the real health problem right now that we're facing is air pollution.
Yeah. So can you guys hear me? Hello? Yeah, good. So Javier, maybe one very interesting topic for me is how do we make people that has cars, people that is used to have these cars, transition to other alternatives, because we need the transitions. Certain cities want it, certain cities are figuring out how to do it, but I think generally it's not something they are against. I would say what they are against is the speed, and cities are not probably as fast as you guys or as we guys. Then the other side of the balance is the people. So I have a car. How do I move from having a car to having a scooter? How do you guys feel, maybe from your perspective on this?
I think it's not like moving from having a car to having a scooter. It's having options and, and use the better option for each type of commuting. If you're going to the center of Madrid, it makes no sense to use your car. But if you go into the mountains, maybe, I mean, you can own a car. So it's giving opportunities. And we are seeing the cities where this kind of mobility is working is those with good public transportation and with other options like car sharing, moped sharing. So the bigger you make this ecosystem, the easiest for the people is to choose the right way to move. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean to sell the car right away. It's okay, I have a car, but I use it for a different purpose. So I think it's just that. It's giving the opportunity or give other options to the citizens.
Do we feel, maybe Paul, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, that you were mentioning that there'll be consolidation, no? That now there is a hype, a lot of companies have gone to the streets and put their vehicles. What do we feel around platforms that integrate? Like, is that, for example, I was in Berlin 2 days ago, and they just released Jelby, which is an app from the municipality of Berlin, in which you can book different vehicles straight from the app. What are the thoughts around this from a perspective of individual players, and how does it work? Do you feel that's something that needs to happen? That's something that it's positive to happen? Does it degrade the brand of each player? How do we deal with these things?
I think that right now initially there's probably a few too many players out there, and that's very quickly become clear. There's 3, maybe 4 that kind of matter in Europe, and I think. So I think now that we're sort of past that first phase, it's a rising tide moment. So whatever we can do to get more people using different forms of transit, I completely agree, is the best solution. I think not only for the companies, but also for the cities. So I mean, we're in everything I just said, we're actually still looking at investing in companies that are, providing cars to people. Right. Now they're electric, they're subscription, they're not, the kind of the cars that you would use, but the logic there is let's try to wean people off this addiction they have of having their own car that uses diesel parked outside their house. And so that's kind of, I think, one of the things that we're looking into. But yeah, I think overall, we're not sort of too concerned about the consolidation.
Okay, yeah. I think one interesting thing about the car is I fully agree with this. Like you need the right vehicle. It seems cars are used for the wrong reasons right now. So you have, there's some data that says that 60% of car trips are below 10 kilometers. And you have this big iron box that's very heavy that transports 1.5% on average, no? They're definitely not the most efficient way to move around in these distances. So it looks like, for what you're saying, you need different vehicles for different types. How do we encourage the guys that are using the cars for less than 10-kilometer distance to jump onto your scooters? What do you think about that?
So I actually, just before this panel, I was on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. And I saw a guy in my feed. He's the CEO of a mid-sized Swedish company. He has a big diesel truck. And he actually wrote that in the last few months, he has taken it, parked outside of the city center, taken a Voi into his job, and then taken a Voi back. And then he takes his car back home. And I think that's just one example of, he isn't, leaving his car at home, but he is not cluttering the streets inside of the city center, causing congestion with his big diesel truck. He's leaving it outside. And I think that we're going to, have to encourage more of these combined mobility modes behaviors, and especially for people that, really, really love their cars. We need to find these solutions. Yeah.
So, then another question that is thrown a lot around these days, especially on e-scooters. I think for bikes, they are not really pushing us, but e-scooters is a very new mode of vehicle, not only e-scooter sharing, but e-scooter as the vehicle itself. Something very new. People is not used to it. A lot of people might not have ride it, no? I think your initiative to give them a license online, it's interesting. But these also, we're starting to see a lot of reports of, there is people dying on e-scooters. They are super dangerous. Are they? Like, do a lot of people die on e-scooters? What are the thoughts on this? What are the real metrics on this?
I mean, of course, like one accident is always one accident too many. And we have, during the summer, done some pretty extensive research into the field of accidents. And we did it in Stockholm and got basically data from the hospitals in Stockholm on e-scooter accidents. And the amount of accidents have increased a lot since last year, but the amount of rides have also increased by the millions. So what we actually saw was during May, June, July this year, there were 240 accidents on e-scooters in Stockholm. Last year, I think it was about 10. We're also seeing that the amount of rides, the Voi rides, were about 3 million in Stockholm during those months, and the number of accidents are among all players. So I would say that it's not more dangerous if you look at that data than to ride a bike or any other means of transportation in a city. But of course, it's our job to make sure that as few accidents as possible happen.
From an insurance perspective, how do you see this evolving? Actually, there is different risks happening or the cars are there. Yeah. Let's put it another way. The accidents happen, very small apparently. How will the evolution of this? What are your thoughts on how will the evolution of this happen? Will there be safer roads if these modes of transport evolve? Is that a thing that we could say?
I mean, probably if these types of mobility grow, cities have to take some actions. And one is protect them from the cars. The other one is the more use of these type of mobility, the less cars in the street, so the less chance of accidents. And from the insurance point of view, it's, okay, there's another way, there's always a risk. So if there's a risk, there's something to insure. Okay, so maybe we have to think about insuring the scooter riders, for example, which is, again, I mean, people can see if they're willing to pay for an insurance. And insurance companies have to move a little bit away from the typical auto insurance to something new. So this comes from is new business for the mobility operators, but also for other actors of the ecosystem.
We're discussing these big metal boxes. Is this what causing the accidents? Why are the accidents happening? Is it like people not knowing how to do these scooters? Do we have any data on how many accidents are caused by cars? Or are cars one of the main reasons for accidents to these new micromobility things? Do we know this? You have any comments on this?
I mean, if you look at the data, most of the serious accidents happen in collision with a car. So what I would say is that, you know, we need to continue educating our users on where and how to ride, but we also need safer bike lanes and better infrastructure for this new type of mobility in order to make it as safe as possible.
Okay.
When, just to sort of jump in there,
Yeah,
when,
sure.
I remember it was about 10 years ago when London started getting more aggressive with the bike lanes.
Yeah.
And the initial response was almost like anger because the drivers were going to lose a little bit of space, and that was pretty precious. And then there was an argument to say that they shouldn't be doing this because it's dangerous. I think if you sort of think bike lanes, of course you need bikes in cities. So I think that that logic is going to start to fail over time. But even just here, you know, in Madrid, when I was taking a scooter, I won't name the brand, but riding it through the city, I was, you know, in the right lane. I was getting yelled at by the bus driver. I was getting yelled at by sort of scooted over by pedestrians that wanted to cross, by a woman on her Vespa. And so I think part of it's, you know, educating the rest of the population and making them understand that I was on that scooter as an alternative to being in a car, which I probably would have done if I didn't have a scooter.
Do you feel population in general, majority of population is adverse to this type of revolution, to this type of seeing these vehicles on the street? Are we creating a divide? I think that's something that's mentioned around. We have a part of the population that uses us a lot. As we mentioned, you put this vehicle on the street and it's being used, and it's being used a lot. But we also have other population that they might see us as something of a change that doesn't really add anything to them and complain about it. So do we feel there is a gap? Is that an age gap, a gender gap?
I mean, of course, there's certain kind of like target groups per vehicle. So you know, people that are like, even despite of having like you know, customers that are like, say 70 plus, you know, it's something that is like, you know, you can see the trend going down. But what we need to do here is not say like, okay, this is a scooter or a bike or a car kind of industry, but like just finding the right layer for each of them. So again, what we need to do is be as efficient as possible. So we're getting highly populated kind of cities, really dense, you know, and what we need to do, find is like the right gap for everyone. So infrastructure on the kind of administration side. On our side, like education and safety, and this also that comes along with city councils. And what we need to make people understand is again, there's like a painful process that we need to go through right now, that it's taking some, like imposing some measures in terms to, in order to promote this kind of solutions. The same way that tobacco was done, in, you know, or helmets even, like I recall again, it's just like going back to my childhood, but in Spain I would like, you know, my mother was driving a moped with my brother and I without helmet, and that was absolutely normal. And now you think about that, you would think about like a third world country doing that. So these are things that you need to at some point just to step a foot and say, okay, enough, we need to change.
I actually found, Berlin 2 days ago, they mentioned that we went through an early mobility revolution. It was a very visual picture, and it was one that, so we went from going on horses, and this created a massive challenge. It was not so much environmental, it was the poop challenge they mentioned. They had literally streets full with poop and they have no solution. But people wouldn't want to change, no? And then the cars had to take over a lot of different, I would say, challenges to implement cars when we were in a horse world. It seems we don't have poop now, but we have something that's even worse than poop, which is pollution, which actually kills us. No, it not only smells bad, but it kills us. So maybe we have very short time. I think I was very interested to end with the note of what is the city of the future. How do you envision like your city of the future? Maybe each one of you can give a short sentence of what you feel the city of the future is for you guys.
I think what you ended with is pretty interesting, because our European cities weren't made for cars. They were made for horses and other means of transportation. And what I would like to see, and what I think that we will see in the next coming years, is that people will start taking back the streets and the ultimate rides to the roads by traveling with another means of transportation than a privately owned car.
Cool.
And right, Voy.
I'm going to end up with a different claim. No, so for us, the main thing is, I think you summarized it perfectly, it's just having options. So at least, for us, we're like targeting a specific market, but like we need all the rest of the players. So we need mopeds, we need buses, we need trams, so this is something that, and we need capillarity as well. So what we need is like for the business that something is this kind of like fallacy where you think that we're all making like billions. This is not true. We're all like suffering. We're all like, like trying to invest with time, with money, to make a change. And what I would say here is that with capillarity, it's going to come, it's going to come like better prices because probably we're all going to have a trend that has happened in other industries, but like towards like monthly fees, and this is going to be ultimately better for everyone. And we won't have like some people have to buy a car because there's no better option, or the option is very slow. So,
Paul, very brief thing.
I'll be brief. So Tier's tagline is change mobility for good, which I thought was kind of cool. So I think, like Caroline said, the right mode of transit for the right trip, I think would be ideal.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Again, the same is providing more options, so people don't have to depend exclusively on the car. So that's it.
Great, guys. Right, micromobility, change the world. Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you.